Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear isn't the NBA you grew up watching. It's the version the league never talks about. People remember the 2000s as the era of highlights, legends, and iconic moments. But behind the posters, behind the trophies, behind the cheers, there were stories the cameras never showed. This was the decade where careers exploded overnight, and others collapsed in silence. A decade filled with hidden rivalries, locker room chaos, shocking tragedies, and decisions that changed the league forever. If you think you know the 2000s, you're about to realize you only saw the surface. The moment Michael Jordan stepped away, the NBA felt like a kingdom without a ruler. For nearly a decade, he was the face of everything: the ratings, the rivalries, the storylines, and when he walked off the court for the final time, the league didn't just lose a superstar, it lost its identity. Teams scrambled to find the next Jordan, but nobody could fill that void. Attendance dipped, TV numbers slipped, and the league suddenly looked vulnerable for the first time in years. But in the middle of that uncertainty, something unexpected happened. A new generation started rising from the shadows. Young stars with completely different personalities and styles began taking over. Some were flashy, some were fearless, and some were straight up unpredictable. And the league quickly realized that the post-Jordan era wasn't going to be quiet, it was going to be wild. Because behind the scenes, the early 2000s were filled with tension. Locker room clashes, power struggles, and egos that were too big to fit in one building. And the team at the center of all that chaos? The Los Angeles Lakers. Shaq and Kobe weren't just teammates, they were two storms colliding every single day. One was the most dominant force the league had ever seen. The other was a young prodigy who refused to play second to anyone. And their battle for control didn't just shape the Lakers, it shaped the entire decade. But the drama in LA was only the beginning, because while the Lakers were fighting each other, the rest of the league was preparing for a shift that would change everything. While the league was scrambling to recover from the Jordan vacuum, a new wave of talent started breaking through players who didn't just fill the gap, they redefined the entire decade. Allen Iverson became the face of rebellion. He wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the strongest, but he played like every possession was a fight for survival. His crossover wasn't just a move, it was a cultural shift. AI brought hip-hop into the NBA, and the league had no choice but to follow. Then came Vince Carter, the human highlight reel. Every dunk felt like a physics experiment gone wrong, a reminder that gravity was optional for him. His 2000 dunk contest didn't just revive the event, it set a standard nobody has touched since. And while the world was staring at Vince, another monster was quietly rising. Tracy McGrady, smooth, effortless, and terrifying when he wanted to be. He didn't need theatrics, he didn't need hype, he just needed the ball, and the rest of the league suffered for it. But the rise of these stars wasn't just about talent. It was about timing. The NBA needed new heroes, and these players stepped into the spotlight with a level of confidence that made the league feel alive again. And just when it looked like the new generation was settling in, the decade delivered something nobody expected: a series of tragedies and scandals that shook the NBA to its core. While Vince Carter was stealing the spotlight with gravity-defying dunks, another force was rising quietly in the background, a player who didn't need theatrics to dominate. Tracy McGrady moved like the game was happening in slow motion for everyone but him. Every jumper looked effortless, every drive felt inevitable, and every possession carried the sense that he could take over whenever he felt like it. Leaving Toronto was the turning point. In Orlando, T-Mac transformed from a promising young talent into a full-blown scoring nightmare. He didn't shout, he didn't celebrate, he didn't need a persona, his game spoke louder than any trash talk ever could. Night after night, he dropped numbers that didn't seem real, making elite defenders look like they were stuck in mud. But behind the smooth exterior was a story the league didn't fully understand. Injuries stalked him, team situations failed him, and just when it looked like he was ready to claim the throne, something always pulled him back. T-Mac became the superstar who could do everything except escape the weight of circumstances he never chose. Still, for a few years, he was the most unstoppable scorer alive. A reminder that dominance doesn't always need noise. And while he was carving up defenses with surgical precision, the league was about to face something far darker than missed potential. Just when it felt like the new generation was settling into their roles, the NBA was hit with a wave of chaos nobody saw coming. The early 2000s weren't just about highlights and rising stars, they were marked by moments that shook the league to its core. Suddenly, headlines weren't about basketball. They were about investigations, locker room conflicts, and off-court drama that spread faster than any crossover or dunk ever could. Teams that looked stable from the outside were falling apart behind closed doors. Superstars clashed with coaches. Front offices battled with players. Rumors turned into stories, and stories turned into full-blown media storms. And then came the tragedies, moments that froze the entire league. Moments that reminded everyone that behind the jerseys and the fame were real people dealing with real struggles. The NBA wasn't just fighting for ratings anymore. It was fighting to protect its image, its players, and its future. The league tried to keep the spotlight on the court, but the noise off the court was too loud to ignore. Every week brought a new headline, a new controversy, a new shock that forced the NBA to rethink everything from its rules to its culture. But in the middle of all that chaos, a dynasty was forming quietly in the shadows. A team that didn't care about drama, attention, or headlines. A team that would dominate the decade without ever raising their voice. While the rest of the league was drowning in noise, one team quietly built an empire. No drama, no scandals, no headlines designed to stir chaos, just basketball. Pure, disciplined, and brutally efficient. The San Antonio Spurs didn't chase attention. They avoided it. And that's exactly why nobody saw them coming. At the center of it all was Tim Duncan, the superstar who never acted like one. No trash talk, no theatrics, no ego, just footwork so clean it looked like a tutorial, and fundamentals sharp enough to dismantle entire franchises. He didn't need to dominate the spotlight, he dominated the scoreboard. Behind him stood Greg Popovich, the mastermind who turned simplicity into a weapon. While other teams chased flashy plays and big personalities, Popovich built a system where every player knew their role, every possession had purpose, and every mistake was a lesson. The Spurs weren't the loudest team, they were the most dangerous. And as the league spiraled through controversies and chaos, San Antonio kept winning, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. They became the dynasty nobody talked about until it was too late to stop them. But the calm wouldn't last forever, because on the other side of the country, two superstars were about to ignite a storm that would take over the entire decade. While the Spurs were quietly building a dynasty, the Lakers were doing the exact opposite. They were building a spectacle. And at the center of it stood two forces of nature who were never meant to share the same universe, let alone the same locker room. Shaquille O'Neal was the most dominant physical presence the league had seen since Wilt, a 7-foot, unstoppable wrecking ball who made backboards shake and defenders rethink their career choices. Beside him was Kobe Bryant, young, hungry, and wired, differently from everyone else. Kobe didn't just want greatness, he demanded it. Every practice, every possession, every moment was a test. And when you put that kind of fire next to Shaq's raw power, the result wasn't just success, it was chaos wrapped in championships. The Lakers didn't just win, they overwhelmed. 3 straight titles, countless iconic moments, and a level of dominance that felt unfair. But behind the banners and the celebrations, the tension was boiling. Ego clashes, media leaks, and whispers of a fractured locker room followed them everywhere. The world watched two legends rise together and slowly tear each other apart. Their partnership was a storm, beautiful, violent, and impossible to sustain. And when it finally exploded, it didn't just break up a team, it reshaped the entire league. The Lakers dynasty ended as dramatically as it began, leaving fans wondering what could have happened if the two had stayed united. But the decade wasn't done evolving, because after the fall of one dynasty, a new generation was already preparing to take the spotlight.